San Francisco is gay. It's a city that's sexually attracted to other cities of the same gender, you know, in a gay way. And if you want to learn about the history of bisexuality, you have to at least take a cheeky little peek at San Francisco. How did this one particular city become a hub for LGBT life? How does an entire city gain a reputation as the place where anything goes? From 1848 to 1850, a small town of 800 people exploded to 35,000 residents. People were coming from Chile, from Peru, from China. Some Black Americans escaping enslavement came to this little California town. It was the gold rush. And this was San Francisco. This particular type of population growth, men looking to make their fortune, meant that this new culturally diverse population was made up of over 95% men. And the cultural diversity meant that the city embodied a live and let live attitude. With few women to fill traditional feminine roles, such as the domestic ones, men often took on those roles. Guys would cross-dress at masquerade balls. And actually some women would also cross-dress, apparently to reap the benefits of manhood in this society. Mexican and South American sex workers settled in the city, becoming a staple of the culture. San Francisco was a different sort of place, with some open-mindedness about sexuality and gender. It was not Victorian England. In the late 1800s, a conservative political movement aimed to fight against the city's vices. Cross-dressing was outlawed in 1863. The queer culture of the city shifted to bars and nightclubs. And San Francisco was still a port, plenty of sailors passing through. And you know what those sailor boys get up to, don't you? Sailing, mostly. But San Francisco's reputation for vice had travelled far and wide, and people specifically looking for queer community were now moving to the city for exactly that. The first lesbian bar, Mona's, opened in 1934. By the 1940s, cops had begun raiding gay bars, and that continued into the 1960s. However, compared to other places, San Francisco was still far more friendly and welcoming to alternative lifestyles, so people went there. Gay groups formed, such as the lesbian civil and political rights group, the Daughters of Bilitis, in 1955. In 1961, Jose Sarria was the first openly gay candidate for public office in the US. He didn't even expect to win, but ended up getting 6,000 votes, which shocked the political establishment because it showed the power of the gay constituency. And yeah, this was 8 years before the Stonewall riots. In 1966, police harassment at Compton's cafeteria led to a major riot which is credited as the beginning of trans activism in San Francisco. 3 years before Stonewall. I sometimes like to refer to Stonewall because it's a well-known reference point in history, but it's always important to acknowledge that Stonewall was far from being the beginning. The culture and the activism had been around for a long time before that. But even though trans people, bi people, gay men, lesbians were all marginalized in this society in similar ways, there wasn't always a solidarity between them. So you've seen how queer San Francisco already was by the 1960s. The city was destined for this. It was only natural that a place founded on a disregard for gender norms should be one of the major hubs for early bisexual activism. And this part of the story begins with a woman named Maggie Rubenstein. She was born in 1931 in San Francisco and knew she was bi since she was a teenager, having had crushes on boys and girls, but wasn't sexually with anyone until she was 21 when she married her first husband. An interracial couple in the 1950s, neither of their parents approving of the marriage, they were at a disadvantage to begin with. When they ultimately split up, Rubenstein began a relationship with a woman and started kind of living as a lesbian.
And I really, at each of those disparate times, felt in the first relationship that I was heterosexual and the second relationship that I was lesbian. What I came to realize is that I really am both. I'm both heterosexual and lesbian, that both of those components are extremely important to me.
She worked as a nurse at the Center for Special Problems, which often worked with gay, lesbian and trans populations, and through this job she knew some gay men, and through them she met her first woman lover, who was apparently some glamorous Hollywood screenwriter. I haven't been able to figure out who this was, but that sounds like some exciting gossip, right? She also joined the Daughters of Bilitis, the lesbian group I mentioned earlier. She told her lesbian and gay friends that she thought she was bi, but they insisted she was a lesbian, which had her questioning for years whether she was really bi or not. In 1969, Rubenstein finally officially came out as bi because of the bi erasure she was seeing at the Center for Special Problems when it came to sex education. There was a gap in the information they were handing out, and something needed to change. Coming out wasn't easy. Remember, the idea of an LGBT community wouldn't really become a thing until the 1990s. She said it was a really scary experience and she lost some friends because of it, though she gained others. Her mother told her she wished she'd just have been a lesbian instead of bisexual because all lesbians do is hug, which Rubenstein says doesn't quite match her personal experience with lesbians. It's a special kind of hug, Mom. A special naked hug. Ultimately, the centre did actually change their program to include bisexuals. In my experience, being the first person to just say, hey, by the way, I'm bisexual, it's a thing, we exist, that's often half the battle. Rubenstein was into ethical non-monogamy, and I know that a lot of people don't like that, but please don't switch off the video just yet. There's nothing wrong with ethical non-monogamy, and if you've got a problem with it, you're gonna lose out on an awful lot of LGBT history. Actually, a lot of human history as well. So being bi, being non-monogamous in the 1970s, Maggie Rubenstein fucked. She was a busy bee. A busy bi. She was a busy bi. She's a busy bi. Wit. As well as working in sex education programming, she was also working in sex workers' rights activism. This is a woman truly after my own heart. In 1973, she co-founded San Francisco Sex Information, an organization which provided free sex education. You could just phone up and ask your questions about sex and get a non-judgmental professional answer. And this organization became a bit of a bisexual haven. Rubenstein felt love and acceptance among bisexuals, a sense of relief. She found that the gay community didn't really want bisexuals around, and straight people certainly didn't either. So she and her lover, Harriet Levy, came up with the idea for the Bi Center, a place where bisexuals would not have to struggle alone.
There might be more bi people in the world than gay or lesbian people. I don't know. I don't care. What's important is that people have a place to connect, a place to be, a community consciousness, and an acceptance of one another without judgment.
So in late 1975, she invited about 20 bisexuals to gather in her attic, people who were drawn to the idea of an expanded and inclusive notion of human sexuality that avoided dichotomization of sexual orientation, and together explored the possibility of founding a bisexual community centre. And it worked. The San Francisco Bisexual Center was born, but they didn't have their first location at first. They started meeting in 1976, but the following year they actually opened their doors, running meetings out of the homes of their members, including that of a man named David Luria, who worked with Rubenstein at the San Francisco Sex Information. They opened up their doors on September 23rd, which might sound familiar to you as Celebrate Bisexuality Day, but that's just 100% a coincidence. The stars aligned. It's the stars. I don't believe in God personally, but the fact that it seems like God wants bisexuals to just really enjoy the 23rd of September makes me think that maybe she exists. And she's bisexual. And a Libra. David Luria, born in 1945, was raised Orthodox Jewish. He grew up in Philadelphia, which was very anti-Semitic at the time. Growing up in the 1950s, he felt terrified of his bisexuality. He didn't know what it meant and never heard the word bisexual until he was 26 years old. He said he learned to feel comfortable with his bisexuality through his religion. My grandmother taught me that I'm okay for being Jewish, even though the rest of the world doesn't think that, which made it easier to get that I'm all right for being a minority, even within a minority. Although I don't think my grandmother was trying to make me feel better about being bisexual, Luria was also a teacher and a sexologist, and he and his wife Lee were seeking a bi community because they didn't feel they should have to sacrifice any kind of relationship by identifying as either gay or straight. In 1973, that search brought them to San Francisco. If a bi movement was going to happen, Luria said, it would begin here. Working with Maggie Rubenstein and joining that fateful meeting in their attic, they opened up their home to become the base of operations for the Bisexual Center. The Bi Center team was hopeful that they could gain acceptance in the gay and lesbian community. They felt that they would be non-threatening and undemanding, and that would be enough. And after all, pop stars like David Bowie and Elton John were coming out as bisexual. Bisexuality seemed to be at least somewhat in fashion. Surely within a few years the bi movement would be bigger than the gay movement. Yeah, I can see how it seemed like that was going to happen. Ultimately, this time would come to be remembered as a bisexual chic, as a fad, nothing to be taken seriously. It became an uphill battle. Well, you know, it's real nice that my sexual orientation is in fashion right now, but when it's not in fashion, it's still going to be my sexual orientation. The Bi Center hosted all sorts of events, from workshops on gender and hangouts to exhibitions and performances. Events were sort of split between social meetings and political meetings. Politics was vital to them. Their membership quickly shot up from about 150 to 450 due to media exposure while fighting the Briggs Initiative. The Briggs Initiative disallowed gay and lesbian teachers from working in California's public schools. Of course, laws like this don't exclusively discriminate against gay people. David Laurier himself was a preschool teacher, so this directly affected his life. He used to joke that if it passed, he'd only be allowed to work a half day. But obviously bisexuals don't get 50% of a job, they get fired. Homophobes don't half love bisexuals. The general consensus has usually been that the only good bisexual is a closeted bisexual. The gay community, they found, were not initially accepting of the bi community at all. Gay papers, such as the Bay Area Reporter, seem to be intentionally avoiding mentioning bi inclusion. Rubenstein and Laurier and co. wanted to take that up with the Coalition for Human Rights, but they also needed them to be educated about bisexuality, so they set up a 3-hour workshop with 20 different speakers, a crash course in bisexuality. Out of the 56 organizations in the coalition, 3 people showed up. It was a real clear signal. You don't count, you don't exist. We're not interested. Harvey Milk was apparently not very supportive of the bi community, and Maggie Rubenstein got in a lot of arguments with him. She was quite politically active. But in the end, Milk did ask bisexuals for support during his 3rd run for the Board of Supervisors, so I guess in the end he kind of warmed up to us. Not everyone was hostile to the bisexuals though. Apparently Phyllis Lyon, the co-founder of the lesbian group Daughters of Bilitis, was actually very supportive, so that's really awesome. The Bi Center team was made up of quite politically radical bisexuals and had a policy of inclusion. All human rights were important to them. They were feminist, anti-racist, anti-classist. The group was based on inclusivity. For example, in the women's groups, anyone who identified as a woman had the right to be there. So a lot of transgender people started coming to the Bi Center. There were a lot of transvestites and transsexuals who came to the Bi Center because they were not going to be turned away because of the way they dressed. I also found an ad in an old transgender magazine from the Bi Center for a gender and sexuality workshop. We will explore the interrelations of gender feelings and sexual preference. We will look at the male and female sides of our personality and how we feel about those aspects of ourselves that differ from the stereotype. We will do some processes to determine the M/F aspects of ourselves, and we'll explore about how we feel about them. We will discuss sexuality and whether we choose to play out the gender role assigned to us by society, or whether we can shift to attitudes supposedly held by the opposite gender if those feel good to us. We will deal with the issue of the transvestite transsexual in transition and how sexuality evolves as gender role changes. We will attempt to present a summary of the fragmented and confusing information on gender and sexuality. This is really exciting for me to read because I'm sure a lot of you have seen the social media rumors about how bisexuals were like big time transphobes, and it appears to be bollocks. I find a lot of these rumors are just like anecdotal experiences from anonymous people who are like, I knew a transphobic bisexual once, which is quite probable. That experience can't be denied. Cis people are transphobes sometimes. But in real life, the TERF origins within the LGBT community were not generally bisexual identified. Let's not get into that. There was a belief in this feminist gay movement of the 70s that there was a major social revolution happening which would lead to a more socially conscious androgynous individual who was not defined in terms of limits but in terms of expanded potentialities. The concept of this androgynous being seems to have been pretty prominent among bisexual activists of the 70s, which is very contrary to this weird internet meme of gender essentialist bisexuals. Bisexual activists saw the future as androgynous. I think that's pretty cool. Since this was San Francisco, and also several of the founding members of the Bi Center were sexologists, they were sex positive and made an effort to educate people about safer sex, even before AIDS had been fully recognized. As the 1980s pressed on, AIDS became a primary focus. Rubenstein put on the very first Women in AIDS program, and they created programming for safer heterosex regarding AIDS. The center was putting on workshops at gay bathhouses on safer sex. At the time, officials wanted to shut down bathhouses so that they could slow HIV transmission. Folks at the Bi Centre disagreed because the baths were possibly the best way to reach a large number of men who had sex with men and teach them directly what they needed to do to be safe and how to enjoy safe sex. People like David Laurier made safe sex sexy. The centre pushed for bisexuals to be recognised as an at-risk demographic for HIV, but were ignored. Bisexuals were undoubtedly going to be scapegoated for transmission, which ultimately they were, and in the meantime, people were going to ignore activists who were trying to make sure bisexuals were safe. AIDS needed to be talked about in a broadly inclusive way. Not all people who identify as gay men have strictly gay sex lives, and not only people who ID as gay or bi even are having gay sex. For whatever reasons that may be, a well-rounded bisexual sex education can be beneficial to anyone. But since the Bi Centre was made up of doctors and educators in this field, the centre began to fall apart as they focused their efforts towards HIV prevention. In 1982, there was a wellness conference at UC Medical Center. At the time, the Bi Centre was a very small organisation. We had maybe 600 members, but only about 50 active members. Out of that, we had maybe 12 people putting on presentations at the wellness conference, yet every single one of the people on the main platform refused to say the word bisexual. Over and over again, we were contributing a major amount of energy and had speakers refusing to say the word bisexual. We were furious, but we still went on. After 2 years of campaigning, David Laurier finally convinced the San Francisco Department of Public Health to recognize bisexual men in their official AIDS statistics, which then extended to health research all throughout the US. People had gradually been becoming more accepting of bisexuality, but HIV changed that. People's attitude towards that openness changed. Activists like Laurier and Rubenstein were now focusing more of their energies on HIV education. The largest bisexual organization in the United States at the time, the Bi Centre sadly closed its doors in 1984. But the story doesn't really end there. Several members, including David Laurier and Maggie Rubenstein, co-founded an organization called BiPol, a political bisexual activist organization which, in 1990, held its first national bisexual conference, which was attended by 450 bisexuals. The Bay Area Reporter called it Bisexual Stonewall. At the conference, the mayor signed a declaration that June 23rd would be Bisexual Pride Day in San Francisco. Apparently, I don't know, 23 is an important bisexual number, is what I get from that. Other bi-orgs were formed in the Bay Area, and in 1990, the Bay Area Bisexual Network began publication of the bisexual magazine Anything That Moves. The title came from a sort of reclaiming the stereotype that a bisexual will shag anything that moves. The editors said the goal of the magazine was to write or print or say anything that moves us beyond the limiting stereotypes that are displaced onto us. Maggie Rubenstein was a Grand Marshal in the San Francisco Pride Parade in 1992. The 90s saw a change in how the community thought of itself. It was no longer the gay and lesbian community with occasional bi and trans tag-alongs. It was the LGBT community. David Laurier continued his work as a sex educator all throughout the 80s and the first few years of the 90s until his death from AIDS-related kidney failure at 47 years of age in 1992. After decades of work for the bi community, as Naomi Tucker put it, his absence was incomprehensible. The eclectic crowd of those who had come to mourn his death, teachers, young children, AIDS activists, bi activists, leather daddies, sex radicals, therapists, rabbis, and family members, was a testimony to how instrumental David was in bringing communities together. What Maggie Rubenstein remembers from the 80s and the AIDS epidemic in San Francisco was a time when gay men and bi men, lesbians and bi women came together to take care of each other. That's not a story I've heard everywhere, but it definitely warms my heart to hear that that was the case in San Francisco. I think that's quite beautiful. Rubenstein says one of the strengths of the LGBT community is its diversity. And I guess that's one of the strengths of San Francisco too. I feel very lucky and proud that some of the early founders of Bi Community based their work on sex positivity, inclusivity, diversity, and just a passion for helping others. And as for Rubenstein, I have an acquaintance or two in common with Maggie, and I have been assured that now in her 90s, she's still very much alive. So thank you, Maggie Rubinstein, one of the mothers of bi-activism. I think we struck gold on this one. I pieced a lot of the information for this video together from old newspaper clippings from the 70s and 80s and books from the 90s. Researching bi history is very much detective work, digging up old primary sources, because as far as I know, no one's written a comprehensive history of the bi movement. I chose to focus on David Luria and Maggie Rubinstein because of their prominence in the content I found, but there were many names I skipped over in this video for the sake of simplicity, and there's much more research to be done on both San Francisco and the rest of planet Earth. I want to encourage you to look into your local history and see what you can dig up, and please share what you find. If you want to watch more videos like this, please like and subscribe, and also support my Patreon if you like. That's an option. And otherwise, just press various buttons of support below me here. Thank you so much for watching, and a big thank you to my patrons for making this possible, and a big sloppy digital kiss, NFT kisses, non-fungible kisses to Pat R, Danny Aidenstone, Fluffy Bunny Boo, Helena Vavarousis, Justin De Lima, Matheta, Siobhan, Stephen Bailey, Tasha Heim, The Digital Witch, Wix, Aaron, AJ, Alice, Amelia D, Andreas Evans, Anna S, Apathetic Gaiety, Eric Parkinson, B, Ben Hengst, Beslav, Beth Hershey, Break Every Yoke, Katrina Lexi, Charis Edwards, Chloe Strange, Chris Endicott, CJ Gibson, Connor Thompson, Deanna McMillan, Dropout Ninja, ES, Irienby, Ellen Hogan, Ellie Cannard, Elsie Astro, Emily Fournier, Emery James Fairgrieve, Evergarden Wall, Fafe Alania, Fatal Drum, Felixer of Life, Gavin Salmon, Ghosts and You Might Die, Good Old Floyd, Grace Robertson, Hellfrog, Henry Mead, Hilda Mangold, Jam Kwasowski, Jasper Rose, Jessage, Juicy Fantasy Queen Plant Hookups, Jules, Juliana C, Juniper Lopez, Kale, Kate and Jess, Kim Y, Kisa, Lacey Cox, Lillian Brink, Lisa Spitalovitz, Lord Asriel, Marla, McKenning Wood, Miss Mad, Mizaka Demizan, Moif Velocita, Mugsy, Mirren McGlynn, Nat Jordan, Nico, Nick Snary, Nina, Octo, Olive, Ollie Ronan, Peach, Pregnant Seinfeld, Queer Aesthetic, Rebecca Peacock, River Haddock, Rob St. Mary, Rock the Shell, Sarah R, Savrad Musin, Sawyer Donk, Shaved Headed By, She Algorithm, Sithvich, Soy, Spaghetti Rabbit, Steve, Straw Fox, Summertime Killer, Susie S, Sveeple the Transboy Valkyrie, The Children of Jack Acid, Tia Till, Tina Gigya, Tom Harrison, Troy Zaire, Burlux, Vicious Panda, Vince Whitaker, Wards, and Will O. Connor. Thank you so much. My patron saints. That should be the name of the tier, is patron saints. Thank you so much for making this possible. I love doing this. I appreciate it so much. And this year has been incredible. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. Thank you for choosing me. I appreciate it so much. I feel so, I don't know, blessed by the Libra god that I don't think exists. Okay. I feel blessed by my patron saints, regardless of whether there is a real bisexual Libra deity in the heavens watching over us. So thank you so much, and here's to another year of videos. I'm looking forward to it.